where I learned about the real issues within our criminal justice system and what real reform would look like. And so I resigned from that position in 2014 in order to start No Exceptions, which is an organization that was founded by prisoners, ministers, lawyers, and educators, basically. And
so both of you would like to talk about some very, very important things in prison. And I think, Pastor, as you've said on a number of occasions, we know a lot about a person who has been convicted up until the prison wall. And after that, we don't know anything else about them unless we try to keep them in there as long as we possibly can. And so what we'd like to do today, over the next minute and a half that we have in this segment, is to start talking about some of the issues dealing with being incarcerated.
Okay. Well, you know, like I said, as an ex-offender, having spent 5 years of my life incarcerated in the Tennessee State prison system, you know, I can truthfully say that I've experienced slavery, because slavery is legal in the prison system. And they make it legal, they give you a job and they'll pay you 13, 14, 15 cents an hour. You know, way, way, way below minimum wage for anybody. And, you know, and you're at their beck and call for whatever it is they want you to do. And I've experienced that, having been incarcerated. And it's an issue. And it's long been an issue. It's been legislated into this country, into our Constitution here. Because, you know, slavery, of course, was abolished. But at the same time, it still lives on in the prison system, because slavery is legal when someone commits a crime. You know, now I agree that people that commit crimes should be punished. When I was a criminal, I committed crimes, I should have been punished.
Okay, and so what we'll do, we'll take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll allow Reverend Alexander to talk about some of the jobs and some of the ways that the money is distributed among prisoners in the system. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
In the laundry. And
prisons would not run without prisoner labor.
Right.
Prisoners participate in their own incarceration.
Let's take this second segment to give us an overview in terms of people going into the system and how they are assigned work, and anything that has to do with working people.
Absolutely.
in the prison. Is there some kind of hierarchy?
Well,
is there some kind of how is that done? Do you take an examination to determine where your skills are best, et cetera?
There are different tests required for different sorts of jobs. You know, there are requirements, different skill levels, different abilities. But we can relate that directly to what Pastor Walker was saying about slavery.
Okay.
And so I think there's a tie-in there.
Okay, so when we come back, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
And that's what I wanted to do, to give you this part of this 8-minute segment.
Okay.
To talk about some of the economics of the prison system, and why we can consider it to be a continuation of slavery. You see, and I think when you say that they're paid 13 cents an hour.
Yeah. 15
Yeah,
cents,
between 13 and 50 cents an hour is the average in Tennessee, but that's not even required.
Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker and Reverend Alexander concerning abolishing slavery, modern-day slavery in the state of Tennessee, dealing primarily with the penal system in the state of Tennessee. And Pastor Alexander, let's see if we can have you to give our audience some information in reference to the kind of work that is done in prison and how persons become involved in this work, perhaps how much money is made, whatever you wish to give us, because I think that anything that you might give us is something new to me, you see, and probably much so to our audience. Let's do it from that perspective.
Okay, absolutely. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to connect that to Pastor Walker's statements about slavery, since we're talking about modern slavery. You know, I hope that a lot of your viewers have seen the documentary 13th by Ava DuVernay. It's incredibly important. If they haven't, I would strongly advise them to watch it. It's streaming on Netflix. And what that documentary does so well is it breaks down the prison industrial complex in the United States. And it explains how what we have done is we've moved from a system of slavery to the convict lease system to an era of Jim Crow, and now what we have we call mass incarceration. You know, so how does this continue? How does slavery keep manifesting over and over? And one of the ways is that we've never abolished slavery, right? So, and we think, what? Because we all learned in school, right? The 13th Amendment abolishes slavery, among other things. But actually what it does is that it narrows the category. So the 13th Amendment contains what's known as a criminality clause, which basically reads, if I could just read this for a moment, this is from the Tennessee Constitution, it's the same as the federal. And it says, Article 1, Section 33, the Tennessee Constitution reads that slavery and involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, are forever prohibited in this state. Now that exception allows for the institution of slavery to still exist. And so...
Except for the...
Exactly, except, yeah, it's abolished except for punishment of a crime.
That is what we're trying to abolish in the state of Tennessee. Yeah,
absolutely, exactly. And so in abolishing this, after watching the documentary of 13th, one of the things that struck me and struck other clergy members and lawyers was that, wait, until language matters, and until you do something about the fact that our own Constitution contemplates and ensures that some form of slavery exists, it will continue to be reborn. It will continue to manifest. So the very simple solution, and it's one that is an active and live bill this session in the Tennessee legislature, is to simply amend that language to take out the criminality clause. So what it would read, it would say that slavery and involuntary servitude are forever prohibited in this state. It's very simple. You know, there's not another Western democracy that abolished slavery that maintained an exception. No one would write this like this today. And so, but as long as you have that, then you can have a system where you want to increase your number of individuals who are incarcerated, because I agree with you, right, Pastor Walker, that there are times when it is necessary to socially segregate someone, but in a system of law, we contemplate that punishment should have an end. But when you're making more money off of the bodies of people, when you have them warehoused, than what they're generating on the street, it creates an incentive to keep people locked away, to be caged, longer. And you know, the economic impact, we can talk about the jobs within the prisons. People work all kinds of jobs. You know, the only way that prisons actually function is through prison labor. Prisoners participate in their own incarceration. They don't have the manpower to keep everyone locked up. I mean, we always have, a horrible time having enough security staff in Tennessee prisons. They're always understaffed, perpetually, and that's true across the country. So how is it we keep people who are really no longer a threat, the vast majority, and who would much rather be at home and could be productive out? How do we keep them in? It's because people are participating, because they don't want to stay in trouble, and they do want to go home one day. And so they work in every aspect of the prison. They cook food, they wash clothes, they clean the buildings, they keep up maintenance, the heating, the air, the water, they paint, they do construction, they perform clerical work, they're clerks. Every place you can imagine, there are prisoners working within a prison system. That's how it continues to go. And so in the state of Tennessee, on average, prisoners will earn something between 17 cents and 55 cents an hour, with some exceptions. But that's not mandatory. So for example, in other southern states like Alabama or Texas or Florida, and I believe even Georgia, prisoners are paid nothing.
You know, and I hate to interrupt there, but that comes to mind in reference to the labor that is there, but who makes a determination as to whether or not that labor shall be used to do certain things, and who makes the decision in terms of that the prisoners should be compensated for what they're doing?
That would be a decision made at the state level, right? So the state of Alabama has chosen not to compensate, but it's not really compensation. And if we're talking about the economic impact, I think we have to go beyond just what a prisoner is making per hour. Think about the economic impact on their family, because the majority of people on the inside have families on the outside. Many times they're married, they have children. You know, you have a lot of single parents on the outside. They're not really single, but their partner's incarcerated. And so they become a quote unquote burden on the system because the other half of that partnership is incarcerated and they can't provide for their families adequately. It destabilizes not just families, but entire communities. You know, and that's another way that it's modern day slavery. It used to be the case if someone did a crime, they would do their time, but then eventually get out and come back into the community. Now with our increased sentencing links that we have, people are incarcerated often permanently or for decades and decades, and what we see now are multiple generations of the same families. And that's when we say it impacts more than just a family, it impacts an entire community. And it has a very adverse economic impact on that entire community.
Yeah.
But when you have things like private prisons for profit,
Right.
you know, that are making a profit literally in trading flesh on NASDAQ, because that's what's happened. I mean, I don't think we can like try to find a euphemism for this. They're trading in human bodies,
Yeah.
you know.
And these private prisons, they compensate, do they compensate prisoners that are incarcerated?
It would depend on the state, and no more so than a state institution. But I mean, think about the economic impact of that. They're making money, right? Who do they owe a fiduciary duty to? Not you or me or the community, to their shareholders.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're
That's
going
who's
to
making
take
money.
this second commercial break,
Right.
and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Where does the money go?
Into the pockets of shareholders.
Yeah.
One of our chants outside the last time there was a demonstration in front of CCA was, hey, CCA, what's a black man worth today?
Yeah.
Because they're trading them.
Yeah.
It's on,
it's from
you
the
know,
auction block to
straight
the,
off the auction block
to the
into the
NASDAQ.
cage.
Yeah.
It's they can rebrand themselves as Core Civic or anything they want, but the bottom line is
That
slave
they
traders.
have access to labor.
Yeah.
They use that labor, and
Yep.
they are being compensated.
Right.
The prisoners are being compensated at a minimal,
Yeah.
whatever they're
Yeah.
compensated. But there's a pile of money
Yeah.
that goes to the shareholders.
So what happens, as CCA is actually organized is what's called a REIT, a real estate investment trust, which means CCA doesn't pay federal taxes because they move almost all their profits immediately to shareholders. And so, I mean, so not only is this a corporation making money off of human flesh.
And they can also use the money that they make off prisoners in order to build more facilities.
Of course, they have no incentive to offer programs or to help reduce recidivism. They want reoccurring customers.
Make those points, you know, because I mean that's an extraordinary kind of thing that
That's true.
that they're there and they're laborers, and everything that has to be done is done by the prisoners.
Right.
Without a doubt.
And the money that is made. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker and Reverend Alexander in reference to abolishing slavery in the penal system in the state of Tennessee. And of course, Pastor Walker, let's see if we can start off with you by having you to give us some information in reference to how this money flows, and I mean where it starts and because I think very, very few people understand exactly how this operates. We know that they're working there, but
Well, first of all, Dr. Haney, you got to realize that technically slavery has not been abolished in the United States of America, because if there's an exception, that means it's still in existence. So slavery is still alive and well in the prison systems, and the incentive is people are making money. You know, you got private prison systems, companies, CCA, Correction Corporation of America, you know, that's funneling people, that are handling people that are being funneled into the prison system. You know, you go from being traded on the auction block to being traded on the NASDAQ now, and all these shareholders stand to benefit. You know, you have to ask yourself a question: who are the shareholders? You know, are the shareholders some of our attorneys or our lawyers or our prosecutors, our judges, or the like. You know, some of the shareholders are legislatures. You know, in the Congress and the House of Representatives and the Senate. You know, I would venture to say yes. You know, people that go out and get a 401k and they putting money into that thing like that, and then you got people out there investing your money into CCA of America, and here you are, a shareholder in the prison system, and you know you getting dividends from people being enslaved basically in the prison system.
And managing your money.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
You.
Yeah. So you know, it's a serious issue that needs to be looked at and needs to be looked at intensely because it needs to be abolished. It needs to be truly abolished because then if you do that, then you will start to slowly see the dwindling away of the private prisons. You start because there will be no longer any real incentive for them to continue to build these private prison systems because you know there would be no slavery. You know that net will be gone from them. So and then it would also diminish the school to prison pipeline. You know all these things are set up by design. You know you've got stories where you got judges that have been tried and convicted for selling people into the prison system because they were shareholders in these private prison companies and stuff like that. And it was to their advantage to send